Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about NFL Draft Fantasy Football Takeaways. Yes, the draft is finally behind us. The players have held up their jerseys, put on their hats, hugged Roger Goodell, kissed their families, but now it's time to spin it forward into fantasy football. Now that we know the landing spots for all these players, what are some of the big takeaways as we head into fantasy football drafts for the 2021 season? Before I get into my takeaways, please like this video and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy this video. And my first takeaway is that Ja'Marr Chase is the best bet to finish as the top rookie wide receiver in fantasy this year. So for me, it's a combination of the talent and the situations. Ja'Marr Chase has been my favorite of the rookie wide receiver class for about a year now. I think he can do it all. I don't know that he has a lot of weaknesses in his game, and I think he's well suited to come in right away and be successful in the NFL. From a pure talent perspective, I think he might already be the best wide receiver on the Bengals. People might look at the Bengals and really not like this situation. They have T. Higgins, they have Tyler Boyd already. But I look at this similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers from last season, where I think Ja'Marr Chase fits in sort of that Deontay Johnson do-everything role, where Tyler Boyd might transition into a largely underneath role like Juju Smith-Schuster did. And then you have T. Higgins, who is probably going to be primarily a deep ball receiver, similar to what Chase Claypool did. I think there's a good chance that Chase is the number one wide receiver in this offense in 2021. And speaking of the situation, he's very familiar with the quarterback, Joe Burrow, from his time at LSU. I think that helps with some of the concerns about rust from him opting out of the 2020 season in college. To me, he has the best chance of any of the rookie wide receivers to crack that top 25. I think he'll be a solid wide receiver 3 or better in fantasy in 2021. My second takeaway is that Najee Harris is my favorite of the rookie running backs in fantasy. So I know, like Chase, I picked the highest selected player at that position, but in this case for Harris, it's not just where he was picked in terms of draft order, it's also the situation that he landed in with the Steelers. Now, rushing-wise, yards per carry-wise, it could be a little bit of a struggle for him behind that Steelers offensive line, but I think Harris's value comes in PPR leagues with his pass-catching ability, which was certainly one of his best traits. And I think this fits well with Ben Roethlisberger, who was not somebody who threw the ball downfield a whole lot last season. A lot of those underneath targets could go to Harris in 2021. I think he could honestly catch about 50 balls this year. And there really isn't a lot of competition for Harris. The only people above him right now on the depth chart might be Benny Snell, Kalen Ballage, Jalen Samuel. I'm not worried about that. I think by season's end in PPR leagues, Najee Harris could be a top 15 running back. Now, I mentioned Ja'Marr Chase as my number one wide receiver out of the rookies. Part of that is due to my third takeaway, which is that a lot of the first round rookie wide receivers did not end up in good situations for fantasy, at least in their first season. Jalen Waddle goes to Miami. Tua was very inconsistent in his first year, and now he's in a receiving core that includes Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, and Mike Gesicki. I think with his speed alone, there's certainly going to be plenty of moments where he's making highlight reel plays, but I just don't know if it will be consistent enough for him to be at that wide receiver 3 level in his rookie season. Second, Devontae Smith goes to the Eagles. Now, I admit even in his rookie year, Devontae Smith could be the best wide receiver on the Eagles, but what is that worth in fantasy? Other than a small stretch of Travis Fulgham, really none of the wide receivers were worth playing in fantasy for the Eagles last year. Now, this was due to inconsistency at the quarterback position, and also due to the fact that a lot of catches were going to the running backs and the tight ends. And that's something I expect to continue this year. Jalen Hurts was sort of that definition of inconsistency in his rookie season, completed only about 52% of his passes. So I do think there is some upside with Smith. There is some familiarity with Hurts already there, but I see him more as a wide receiver 4/5, at least in his first year. Next, Kadarius Toney, somebody who I thought was probably a borderline first rounder at best, goes to the Giants. And here I look at depth chart. He's behind Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and that's just looking at the wide receivers. There's also Evan Ingram. There's a return of Saquon Barkley. In Toney's rookie year, I see him to be destined as a gadget player, somebody you're probably not going to want to be playing in fantasy football. And Rashad Bateman, he goes to the Baltimore Ravens. This is a guy I really liked. I'm surprised he went after Kadarius Toney in the draft, but just not a good situation for him to be in Baltimore. No wide receivers were worth starting in fantasy for the Ravens last season. Baltimore's offensive coordinator is already hinting that they might open up the passing game more, but when you add Bateman, when you add Sammy Watkins to a team that already has Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, It's just not a situation that I like for Bateman in 2021. My fourth takeaway is that I'm going to let somebody else take the gamble on Kyle Pitts as their fantasy tight end. Again, let's look at situation. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley dominate the targets for the Falcons when they're both healthy. And you still have Hayden Hurst there at tight end. Now, I do reserve the right to change my mind if somehow Hurst or Julio are traded before this season. But another thing working against Pitts is that historically, rookie tight ends do not fare well in their first season in fantasy football. There have only been 2 rookie tight ends to finish in the top 12 in fantasy points in the last 10 years. Yes, someday I think Kyle Pitts will be putting up Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, George Kittle type numbers. I just don't think it'll be in 2021. And while I do think he could be worth drafting as a tight end 1 in fantasy, right now it's already looking like he's being drafted as tight end 6. To me, there's no upside in that selection. I'd rather wait a little bit longer and get a Dallas Goedert, a Mike Gesicki, a Noah Fant. And for my number 5 takeaway, I'm going to the number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence, who I think is the best bet to finish as the top rookie quarterback in fantasy football in 2021. I think he has everything working for him. I think talent-wise, experience-wise, he'll be ready to go week 1. He has plenty of talent around him. You got DJ Chark, Visca Shenault, Marvin Jones. In the backfield, you got James Robinson and now fellow Clemson rookie Travis Etienne. And Trevor Lawrence will give you fantasy points with rushing. He averaged about 41 rushing yards per game in his last 2 seasons at Clemson, and he had 17 rushing touchdowns in those games. I think part of his success will hinge on how well the offensive line performs. Pro Football Focus graded the Jags offensive line 22nd in the NFL last season, so that's close to league average. They added Walker Little in the 2nd round in the draft this year. All I'm looking for if I'm starting Trevor Lawrence this year is average play from the offensive line. I think they can do that again. Now, how high should he go in fantasy drafts? So let's compare him to Andrew Luck, who a lot of people compared him to in the pre-draft process in terms of the level of prospect that he is. Andrew Luck's worst fantasy season was his rookie season. He had 17.3 fantasy points per game, but that was still good enough to be a top 12 quarterback in his rookie season. Now, can he be a QB1 a la Andrew Luck in his rookie season? I think he has that potential, but with how deep quarterback is in a 1 quarterback league, I don't think it's something you need to really gamble on. I don't dislike taking Trevor Lawrence as your 2nd quarterback in a fantasy league, but I don't think you need to reach for him. If you don't get him, there are plenty of other quarterbacks going outside the top 10, like Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield. You also have Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, the Saints quarterbacks. Point is, if you don't get Trevor Lawrence, there are plenty of other quarterbacks that have that top 12 potential. If you get Trevor Lawrence, great, but don't reach for him. That's it for today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like this video. Thanks for watching, and go Birds.